So, the Pantheon has left. The Keepers are now in charge. And we move on to the story of Galakrond. In the ages after the Pantheon left Azeroth, myriad life forms flourished across the surface of the world. The most savage and cunning were the proto-dragons, who dwelled in the frozen north of Kalimdor. The various proto-dragon species had a wide array of strengths and abilities. Some were gigantic winged beings of incredible fortitude, their spirits tied to the world itself. Others had unknowingly tapped into the latent elemental energies that permeated the newly ordered world. But there was one proto-dragon whose brutality and devastating power overshadowed the rest of his kind. His name was Galakrond, and he was the largest proto-dragon who had ever soared across Azeroth's skies. So mighty was the enormous creature that the beating of his wings could flatten entire forests. Strength, however, was not his only weapon. He possessed a preternatural cunning that made him an exceptional hunter. In time, Galakrond came to dominate the most sought-after hunting grounds in northern Kalimdor. Compelled by an insatiable hunger, he devoured everything in sight. His body swelled to an even greater size, yet nothing could ever sate his cravings. So terrible was his hunger that Galakrond began feasting on other proto-dragons, even the corpses of the dead. Devouring fallen proto-dragons eventually warped Galakrond's mind and body with a necrotic affliction. Misshapen limbs and dozens of eyes sprouted across his gargantuan form. Death energies wafted off of Galakrond's jagged hide, reanimating dead matter. These necrotic powers were infused in Galakrond's victims, and they rose from the dead as mindless abominations. The ranks of Galakrond's wretched minions expanded. Soon he and his ruined followers terrorized the skies over Kalimdor. The other proto-dragons, fractured by long-standing rivalries, failed to unite against this new threat. Tyr, the mightiest of the Keepers, was the first of his kind to notice the danger posed by Galakrond. He warned his fellow Keepers of what he had seen, but he could not motivate them to act. Though the Keepers had once sworn to protect the world, the war with the old gods and the ordering of Azeroth had sapped their collective strength and willpower. They had become indifferent to the world at large, focused solely on maintaining their vaults and arcane machineries. But Tyr was not deterred by his siblings' apathy. His drive to seek justice and order in the world pushed him forward. Tyr knew that if Galakrond remained unchecked, he would devour all nature, spreading his affliction to the far corners of Azeroth. Thus the Keeper sought a means to destroy the giant proto-dragon and his minions. Tyr found his answer with 5 of the greatest and most intelligent proto-dragons in existence: Alexstrasza, Neltharion, Malygos, Ysera, and Nozdormu. Nearly all of these creatures hailed from different strains, and each of them displayed unique powers. Even the 2 sisters, Alexstrasza and Ysera, commanded distinct abilities. The tenacious and kind-hearted Alexstrasza could summon gouts of fire from her maw. The mighty Neltharion possessed incredible strength, and his piercing roar could shatter bone and rock alike. The cunning Malygos could breathe frost, encasing his foes in solid ice. The wise Nozdormu could assail his enemies with blinding storms of coarse sand. The elusive Ysera's breath could debilitate her enemies, sapping their willpower and throwing them into a deep trance. Tyr beseeched the 5 proto-dragons for aid in thwarting Galakrond. The creatures were initially suspicious of the strange being who had approached them, but they soon vowed to fight by his side. Despite their differences, the 5 proto-dragons showed a surprising willingness to work as one. Under Tyr's guidance, Alexstrasza and her companions warred with Galakrond and his fetid minions. Their battles raged over the snowy peaks and rocky spires of northern Kalimdor. Initially, Galakrond's jagged hide warded off the attacks of the 5 proto-dragons. Though disheartened by their enemy's resilience, Alexstrasza and her allies soon found his weakness. They assaulted Galakrond's many eyes and his soft, vulnerable gullet. By using their powers in harmony and trusting in one another, the 5 proto-dragons vanquished their gargantuan foe. Galakrond's lifeless husk plummeted to the ground, smashing into the frozen tundra of what would become known as the Dragon Blight. The 5 proto-dragons had won, despite all odds, but they had only done so by working together. It was a lesson they would not soon forget. Alexstrasza and the others would carry on this ideal of unity and cooperation for ages to come. Tyr and the Silver Hand. This is just kind of like a little note at the bottom. Tyr fought alongside the proto-dragons, but Galakrond proved too powerful even for the Keeper of Justice. In one particular battle, the monstrous creature bit off Tyr's iron hand, suffusing him with necrotic energy. Although Tyr survived, his wound would never truly heal. Many years later, Tyr would replace his lost hand with one forged of pure silver. This silver hand would come to symbolize his belief that only through personal sacrifice could one achieve lasting justice. Wow, that's pretty special. We got a map. There we go. Ordered Azeroth. Gonna just there we go. Mount Hyjal, Shalazar Basin, Ulduar, Wormrest Temple, Well of Eternity smack dab in the middle. N'Zoth, Uldaman, Vale of Eternal Blossoms, Uldum, Ungor Crater, and Ahn'Qiraj. Cool. Come back in. The Charge of the Dragonflights. This is some of my favorite lore, how the different leaders of the different colors of dragonflights came to be. While Tyr and the proto-dragons were battling Galakrond, the other keepers finally emerged from their stupor. Too late, they realized the threat that the corrupted monstrosity posed. They were heartened by the resolve of Tyr's winged allies and ashamed of their own apathy. Tyr, however, never chastised the other keepers. Instead, he convinced them to imbue the 5 proto-dragons with powers so that they could safeguard the lands of Azeroth. Only Keeper Odin challenged this idea. Though he acknowledged the proto-dragons' heroism, he did not agree that Azeroth's fate should be placed on their shoulders. Odin saw Alexstrasza and her ilk as primitive life forms. Only the mighty Titan-forged could be trusted to protect the world. Odin argued that as Prime Designate, he had the final decision on how to proceed. Yet Tyr and the other keepers disagreed. Through bravery and self-sacrifice, the proto-dragons had earned the right to act as Azeroth's guardians. Despite Odin's continued protests, the other keepers moved forward with their plans. After the proto-dragons defeated Galakrond, the keepers journeyed to the frozen tundra where the final battle had taken place. Even Ra traveled from the distant south to take part in the great ceremony that was to come. Acting as conduits of their creator's powers, the gathered keepers bestowed the blessings of the pantheon upon each proto-dragon. High Keeper Ra channeled the powers of his creator Aman'Thul into the proto-dragon Nozdormu. Of all of Aman'Thul's myriad powers, Nozdormu was blessed with a mastery of time itself. Henceforth, Nozdormu became known as the Timeless One, and he held dominion over the interweaving pathways of fate and destiny. The nurturing and ever-merciful Freya called upon her creator, Aenar, to empower the proto-dragon Alexstrasza. Known thereafter as the Life-Binder, Alexstrasza would devote everything she was to the stewardship of the living world. Having proved her courage and compassion in the battles against Galakrond, she was crowned the Dragon Queen and given command over her kind. Freya also beseeched Aenar to bless Alexstrasza's younger sister, the proto-dragon Ysera, with nature's influence. Ysera was charged with keeping watch over the flowering wilds of Azeroth from within the Emerald Dream. Bound to this ethereal dream, she descended into an endless trance and became known thereafter as the Dreamer. Keeper Loken called on his creator Norgannon to endow the proto-dragon Malygos with incredible arcane powers. Henceforth Malygos would be known as the Spellweaver. The limitless realms of magic and hidden arcana would be his to share, explore, and protect. Lastly, Keeper Arcades asked his creator Khaz'goroth to bestow some of his vast power upon the indomitable proto-dragon Neltharion. Known afterwards as the Earth Warder, Neltharion was given charge over the mountains and deep caverns of the earth. He embodied the strength of the world and served for many long ages as Alexstrasza's greatest friend and confidant. Bristling with the Pantheon's energies, the 5 proto-dragons transformed into immense and graceful creatures. Nozdormu's hide took on a bronze hue like a sea of shimmering golden sand. Alexstrasza's scales turned a deep and vivid shade of red. Ysera's lithe form became a vibrant green to reflect her new connection with nature. Malygos turned an icy blue color, and his very scales radiated potent arcane energies. Neltharion's rough hide became an earthy black. From that day forward, these 5 extraordinary beings would become known as the Dragon Aspects. The Keepers also sought to create a new species to help the Dragon Aspects protect the world. These beings would serve the Aspects as consorts and allies. To this end, the Keepers magically altered hundreds of proto-dragon eggs. From them would emerge creatures born in the image of the Aspects. This new race, known as dragons, would form 5 distinct flights: bronze, red, green, blue, and black. Though each of these flights would serve a different dragon aspect, they would all be bound by their duty to protect Azeroth. To strengthen this bond, the Keepers forged a grand tower in northern Kalimdor called Wyrmrest Temple. It would serve as the heart of the dragon's culture, a sanctuary where they could gather and discuss their activities. But above all, Wyrmrest would stand as a symbol of their unity. The Keepers, satisfied with their work, disappeared back inside their lairs, leaving the Aspects to watch over the living creatures of Azeroth. Next time, we find out what Odin does, because he is not happy.